my name is Marie Nuthall, and we are coming to you live from Plein Air Easton headquarters. Plein Air Easton is a 10-day celebration of art with demos that we're going to have today, paint outs, exhibits, and sales, and we will be here through July 20th. Today we are having a demo by artist Alison Barry. She is a Plein Air Easton alumni for 4 years running, right?
Right.
She is a featured alumni painter this year, and she has a piece exhibited here in the headquarters space, and she's going to paint something for us today. She hails from Southern Maryland. She's represented by the North End Gallery in Leonardtown. Is that still correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. And we are about to dig right in. So thank you so much for coming and doing this for us. And we're looking forward to it.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited. I can just feel the excitement being at Plein Air Easton again. It's just such a wonderful event. And I'm really honored to be able to be here and talk about painting with people that love painting. And you're going to have to forgive me at first. I'm not used to painting in front of an audience, much less cameras and lights and microphones. So it might take me a few minutes to just... But what I wanted to talk to you all about today is painting in this kind of a panoramic format. And it's something I don't do all the time, but it's a really good thing to do to kind of jostle you out of a routine. If you're feeling stuck or kind of in a rut, painters do lots of different things to get out of a rut. And this is just one thing that I found to be really effective for me to kind of open my mind to new compositions. And you're giving yourself a restriction. So you're restricting yourself to this long format. So that makes your brain have to work a little harder to make it an interesting composition and one where the eye can be carried through. So I brought in some examples of paintings I've done, just different subject matter. And it really works with any subject matter, even still life. I really enjoy doing still life in this kind of format. So today I will be painting this little pasture scene. And I especially liked this scene for the panorama because it has some really great diagonals and verticals, as well as some nice dark accents to really offset that long static format. So I think these diagonals, it's really necessary to find things that'll offset that. Otherwise, it can just be very bland and static. So with that being said, I'll just get started. I usually start with just an earth tone. This that I'm using here is brown madder, and I just kind of find my dark areas. I'm really sketchy in the beginning and try to be kind of energetic with my brush strokes. And you can always wipe things out or move things around as you go. So I kind of want to indicate where I want those cows first. So this kind of, that guy's in the background. And then get those good diagonals in there. And if anybody has any questions while I'm painting, feel free to just pipe up. So I'm not going to be totally loyal to this photograph. I'm going to do what works for the painting rather than try and make the painting look like the picture. This is also something I'm not really, I usually paint from life, so painting from photographs is a little different for me, but I like it. Those cows aren't going to move, so that's nice. They usually wait until you're working on them, and then they'll stand still for the whole morning, and then once you start working on them, that's when they move to the other side of the pasture. So with cows, I don't try to get them to look like, perfect anatomical representations of cows. I just want them to be accents in my painting. And these actually might be a little big. So I'm just going to take some of that paint off and restate it a little bit. Get that tree in there. The tree is a very important element in this because it breaks through this sky. I like to have something touching on three sides of the canvas at least. If they can touch on all four, that's great. I don't know if that makes sense, but I like to have things going out of the top, especially in these long formats. It kind of breaks it up a little bit. Another thing that I really liked about this scene is you have this, I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's this blue distant hill in the background. And sometimes with these panoramas, it's, you're painting flat vistas like here in the Eastern Shore, which kind of begs for this kind of format. But a hilly scene like this, you get some distance, and that's a little unusual for this format, which I really like. So I'm looking at this little hillside here, and that earth that's under the grass is kind of a orangey earth tone. So I'm thinking about that as I'm putting the paint down, and I'll change all this, but I really just like to scrub it in, get an idea of the color and where things are going, where that little stream is going to be, where the stream hits the cows. So one thing that that's been really helpful, it was kind of an epiphany a few years ago when I was really struggling to just figure out my technique. I got kind of frustrated and just picked up a smaller brush like this and said, I'm just going to do the whole painting in this little brush. I know we all hear, like, use big brushes, get in there, put the paint on, and I'm like, I'm just going to use one brush. That's going to be my limitation. And so I just painted the whole painting in this one little brush just by scrubbing in areas and then zoning in on that color slowly. And what I found was, by doing that, you end up with this beautiful broken color and a much livelier effect because you're not mixing it all on your palette and then laying it in. You're building up the color, and that they're all working together and vibrating off of each other. And it's really, really effective, and it's fun because you don't have to get it exactly right the first time. You can kind of zone in on it. And I work much better that way, I find, than committing to an exact color. I mean, there are many painters that premix and paint, and their work is incredible, and I love what they do. I just don't, it doesn't work for me as well. I wish it did. I wish I could do that. But there are benefits to this. And one of the drawbacks of this, and I'll set myself up here for, a little grace, is the painting looks really bad for a long time and then it starts looking good. So just remember that. It kind of stays in a, you're kind of building things up. Okay, so now I'm going to think a little bit more about this color in the earth right here. And it's kind of a clay, yellowy orange clay color. So, oops, my red is dried out. Let me get some more red. Okay. Oop. All right. Okay, so I'm just mixing a little transparent yellow oxide with some red and adding a little white to that. So I'm going to start adding that in. Okay, I'm going to move up to a slightly bigger brush now that I've kind of got it sketched in. And like I said, these colors they'll be modified later, and when the green goes over them, it'll work together to create the effect of a grassy meadow or a grassy pasture. And I like to get that tone underneath the whole way up, even though I think it's going to change a little bit towards the top. As things move away from you, they get cooler. Not always, but that seems to be a general rule. So as things are going to go up, I'm going to add a little permanent rose. And just kind of maybe a little blue with that to make it more of a violet-y color back up there. You can really just play around with it this way. There's no stakes because you're building your color up, and you can always scrape it back or change it as you're going along. I'm going to try and get that blue hill in the background, just kind of indicate where it is. And I don't always go in the same order. If I'm outside painting, I tend to go in the order of what's going to change first. So I would have done those cows first, gotten those cows in there, and then move on to the things that I know are going to be still. Also, things that if there's a light situation with shadows, I want to get that as soon as possible because that's going to change. If I really like the lighting, it's important to get that in as quickly as possible. And you can make the decision whether you want to stick with that or not. As things change throughout the day, you can stick with it or you can change it. You take a risk when you change it, but I do it all the time. Something happens and you like that better, go for it. The most important thing is to be painting something you're excited about. All right. I almost forgot my little tool. This is one of my favorite little tools. I use it throughout the whole painting. And pretty much it's just a scraper. You scrape off. It works to reveal some really beautiful transparency, but it also works if you make a mistake and you can just scrape it off. So scraping is always better than wiping. I always prefer to scrape if I can. So once I've scraped that back, now you can lay in color over top of it, and it won't mix as much. So you don't want to scrape it all, but just to. Now I can mix up a little green, and these greens in here are quite cool. The sun is setting on this scene. The colors are very rich. And everything's kind of, the light is very subdued. So you just kind of test it out. So towards these back hills, it gets cool. The greens get cooler. I'm going to add some blue to those greens. I find that with greens, if you have a combination of some reds and oranges underneath, and if you mix in some blues with your greens, it won't be an overpowering green scene. Green scenes, summer scenes can get really, really just too much. It's hard to live with a really green painting. So these are just a couple ways to offset those greens, modify them so they're not so overwhelming. And you get the added benefit of the reds. Reds are kind of they are complements to greens. Oops. So it also kind of creates a little vibration, little nice vibration in there. So I'm just kind of laying some of this color in to see how I like it. And once I do that, I might work on these cows a little bit just to get them defined in there. And then I'll come back to the color of the field. So the cows are going to be pretty much the darkest thing. They are the darkest thing in this scene, except for maybe some of these little inner portions of this tree here. So I'm just going to mix up a dark, just kind of I'm going to do like a red and ultramarine blue. Cows have really weird anatomy, and you have to like get certain things right about them, or they look like dogs or bears. And there are like certain things that distinguish them from that. They have these big bodies, but then they have these little these little stick legs. It's so bizarre. And I'm just going to have this body like go right into the other cow. They're going to be one shape. This is going to be just one shape. Then I kind of step back and make sure that is where I want those cows to be. Pretty close. I don't want them to be smack dab in the center, but I mean, it wouldn't be a tragedy if they were, but I want them off to the side just a little bit. Okay. Get those little stick legs. Doop. Doop. Okay. And when you do your little dark areas, this is one of the best places to utilize the scraper, because transparency in your dark areas of your painting is really beautiful, and it takes some of the weight out of that dark. So I'm going to let this kind of set for a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and scrape it, because I love that effect. it's, it makes a painting more interesting if you have different textures throughout. So if you have some areas that are transparent and some areas that are more impasto, that definitely makes for a livelier painting, and one that the viewer is going to want to spend more time with because it's engaging. This little guy is farther back, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on him. He can be a little more just mushy back there. As things go back, they're not quite as defined. I'm going to figure out the color of this tree ridge here, these trees back here. They're quite dark. So I'm doing a sap green and mixing it with red, with a little red, and that really grays out the green, especially once you add some white to it. See, and so this might even have to go a little darker than this, or maybe not. All right. This area in here, I'm reading these colors as kind of purples and greens together. So I'm going to just put in a few. Don't want it for this. I don't know what it is. If it's earth or if it's dead grass. There's kind of a purpley color here. And then I'll put the green over top of it. You don't want to get this initial layer in. You don't want to get it too oily or too much medium. Then it's hard to work into it. I keep it really pretty dry. I don't use very much solvent either, just as much as I need to get the paint on the canvas pretty much. So yeah, I just wanted to get some of that purpley color in, and that really comes through in this tree too. So this tree I'm kind of reading is that same color, that kind of greeny gray. It's actually more over here. And then I'm going to indicate where I want that to come up and off the canvas. And I'll work my sky in around that. All right, so the cow ends here. Going to have that stream go like that and have this one go like that, just right behind that tree. All right, I think I have enough of this kind of undercolor. And now I can go back in with some Actually, let me work on this tree for a moment. So I use a Winsor red, which is kind of my all-purpose red. It's sort of like a cad red light, but this color is quite dark on its own. And sometimes dark areas, I just make them red, especially trees. I'll start out with kind of a red color. And once I get the green around it, that really works out well, usually. I like it. Okay. So I kind of want to get an indication of where these little cattle trails are. I really like those. Also helps define the stream. Anytime you can connect shapes, do it. I like these little lumps of earth down here by the stream. And down here under the tree, I'm going to see that as a shadow underneath that tree. And I always like to have, I mean, I don't always do it, but it's always nice to have a shadow in the foreground. It's like a little gift, because for the viewer, it's a lead-in to your painting. It leads your eye in, but it also makes the viewer feel as though they're standing in a shady spot, kind of looking out at the scene. At least that's what I imagine. So I'm going to have this shadow just kind of come across the bottom. Some little clumps of earth in there. This tree comes down like that, comes up here. Give it a little shape here, like that. Not sure it goes over that far, but it's all right. Mix some more of that red and just kind of indicate a few of these little branches in here. It's nice to have them underneath. I'm going to put, more paint over this to indicate, different layers of this tree, but it's nice to have these little branches kind of poking through. All right, so I'm going to work on some of these greens a little bit. I've been putting them off. I want to keep them very cool. I use a sap green, which is it's a very transparent green, and you can really push it any direction. It's a great color. You can make it cooler or warmer. You can make it, this is a different way of saying the same thing, but you can make it more towards the red side or towards the blue side, or towards the yellow side. Okay. So I'm seeing a couple different layers of hillside here. So I'm going to see that back there. And I want to be careful not to cover all of that red. But I also don't want to leave too much of it, because I don't know. It'll be a little too garish if I do. And if I put this paint down and it appears like, oh no, that's not, it needs to be more yellow than that, then I can just mix up a little more yellow and put that right over this. And the combination, like I said, the combination of those is just really enlivening. It gives more of just an impression, I guess. Maybe that's what the Impressionists were thinking. They're just, instead of looking at something and deciding what that color is and putting the color down, they're looking at it kind of the way light breaks up into color. White light breaks up into all the colors of the rainbow. It's all there. They're seeing all those colors. Just kind of cut out that cow. Boop. Get his little chin in. This little chin part is very important. they've got this little straight part under their head. So there's more earth down here towards the bottom, so I'm going to be careful what I paint over. Okay, and carry some of this color over here. This guy, he's really, I think he might be up farther than I have him. He's almost connected to this shape here. I should have made this bigger so you could see it better, but he's almost part of that, so I'm just going to put him up there. I'll fix his body later. Okay, so there's like a little path here. I'm not going to get it super precise, but I want it to read. All right, so I've got that a little more defined now, so I'm going to go ahead and work on the sky a little bit. I don't like to leave too many things white. I prefer to kind of indicate all around the, what the colors and what the values all around the canvas are going to be. That way you can adjust. You can adjust the colors as you're going. So with the sky, like I said, it was in the evening. The sun was just setting, and the sky was quite dark. When I paint skies, I start out with a reddish orange usually, or sometimes a purple, and then whatever blue is in the sky, I lay that over the blue. I don't put yellow down first very often, but then again, I don't usually paint sunrises and sunsets, and I think yellow comes into play more with those type of scenes. This was just kind of a dusky scene. So I've got quite a bit of red in my sky. And then I can go back in later and add some of the blues. There's some really subtle blues in there. So when I was thinking about this painting and sketching it out, I have my sketch here, the sun was setting over here. But I thought for my painting, since I have this long format, it might work better if I have the sun setting over here. So I'm just going to move the sun over here. And that'll work better for my composition. So nobody will know. Nobody fact checks your painting. And there's not a whole lot of light, not a lot of strong light on the ground. So you can't see it too well in this photo, but the light is hitting these trees on this side a little bit. I'm just going to shift that to this side. The treetops here maybe a little bit. I can just shift that to the other side. But really, there's not a whole lot keeping me from doing that. And when I'm doing kind of sorry, this is not a sun. This is the moon. The moon is rising. So when I'm doing that moon rising, I'm thinking about the color of the sky and how I'm going to make that moon really stand out. And I'm doing sort of a pinkish purple sky, and I think I'll put the moon like right here. So I'm just going to lay down a little bit of yellow. Not green. Let me get some clean yellow. I use this Rembrandt Cad Yellow Medium, and it's just a wonderful all-purpose yellow. I also use a lemon yellow sometimes, but this is my go-to for just about everything I want to add yellow to or make yellow. It's a beautiful color. So I'm just going to put that in there just to indicate where I want that to be. It's not going to be that big, but and I always mix in a little blue when I'm doing my pinks in the sky. I mix in a little blue. And then when you kind of make your moon shape, that yellow is still kind of underneath, and it will create that sort of aura that's really nice. I'll probably make the moon pretty big. Why not? Just leave it like that. I'll come back and work on that a little more. I'm just trying to lay in my sky. So since the moon is rising over here, I'm going to make it a little darker over here. And between these leaves of this tree, this is kind of a spindly tree. The water down below has a little bit of that pink in it, but it's still pretty blue. Well, I don't know, bluish pink. So I'm just gonna indicate that little stream down there. I keep looking up like I'm looking at my scene. That's not my scene. Yeah, it is. It's different. No, it's not. Let's get that cow standing in the water there. And I like having these little bits of moist creek coming down like this. Actually, this cow, that's pretty much where the land stops. So I can just fill that in there. I'm kind of seeing some of that pink from the sky in that water now, so I'm going to go back and add some little pink, hints of pink in there. Oh, that might be too much. When I really want to scrape something out, I get my palette knife. When things kind of start looking kind of muddy or muddled, it either means your values are off or your color got too contaminated. And I just scrape it back as best I can and then kind of clean off my brushes a little bit and clean off my palette area. Sometimes I just wait too long to do that. And if your green gets in with your sky, you're gone for. It's just a mess. Or your stream. So I just like take a minute here and there to clean up my palette a little bit so I don't get yellow and green where it's not supposed to be. They like to drift into areas they're not supposed to be. And also check your white. My white gets really contaminated quick. So I always try to make sure that doesn't get too grubby. All right, that's better. Okay, so this little stream comes right up here, which is great because then we have this nice diagonal here too, as well as this, and then we have this, and it all kind of brings you back here. But you know, it'll carry your eye up here to the cows, up here to this guy, over to the setting moon, and then, or the rising moon, and then back again. At least that's what I like to think. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the sky for a minute. Oop, shoot. And add just some blues into that sky. I see some blues along here, which means they're going to be over here for me. That's a little too dark. When you're working on these little spaces in between tree leaves and tree branches, you want to make your sky darker. Sky is darker when it's peering through trees. So those sky holes are always going to be a step or two darker than your actual sky. Okay, I'm going to work on these grasses down here a little bit. I just want to keep moving around so everything stays in harmony, or as close to it as I can get. So get some of these darker greens down here. See that this cow's feet kind of line up right there. So I'm going to do that. Just kind of draw it by cutting him out. Like so. I don't want him to be too specific though. Or her. I guess it's a her probably. Sorry. Just a shape, just a cow shape, no big deal. I like to make sketches of cows. I keep a sketchbook of them, and if I need a cow somewhere else, sometimes I'll just go to my sketchbook and just put one in there, just if I need one for the composition. They don't have to be there. That works with figures too, keeping a sketchbook of figures nearby if you need a figure, if your painting needs one. Okay, so That's about as specific as I'm going to get with him, I think. So I'm going to try and scrape these guys back just a little bit, just to reveal some of that nice transparency. And also, when you have dark shapes like this, I don't like to have really hard lines. So it also kind of, or edges, it kind of helps your edges a little bit to do that. Especially these guys in the background, just scrape it. And it pushes them back. And then if you got too much, you can always just, put some more paint in there, and that even adds more to it. To lay some nice opaque over a transparency is really a beautiful effect. All right, so I'm getting my yellowiest greens up. I'm going to put them here. These seem a little bluer over here, so I'm going to put some yellowy greens over here, but I don't want to get too much because they get too much quick. I just want to get some in there just to really zing. It's probably a good idea to have a puddle of kind of a cooler blue, like a bluer blue, or bluer green, and then a warmer, more yellowy green. So you can kind of push and pull with them. That's actually like that, like that. Got a little carried away with that stream. So kind of comes down at an angle like this. But your stream's not going to be a straight line like this. It just kind of comes out in little clumps of earth. So you want to really indicate that. Otherwise, it just won't sit right. Put a few little rocks in there, little clumps of mud. Gosh, I keep doing that. Okay. The whole time I'm thinking, when I'm putting color down, that my cows are the darkest, and I want them to be the darkest. I want them to stay the darkest accent on my painting. So everything else I'm going to modify to keep those the darkest things. Even though this is quite dark down in here, this here, it's not going to be as dark as those cows. All right, just going to mix up kind of a puddle of gray-green for this tree. So these little branches that we put in, we're going to cover them in some places but leave them showing in others. And then we have just take some of that paint off. I swear I take off just as much paint as I put on when I'm painting. It's liberating to scrape. I think this orange in here is a little too Technicolor. It's a little too bright, so I'm going to tone that down a little bit. And that's better. So it's going to be nice to have that underneath, but it doesn't need to be quite that crazy bright. I think his head is too big, or her head is too big. There we go. A little better. I mean, I'll probably be adjusting these cows next 3 days from now. They're just like, they're gonna bug me. There we go. All right. Scrape back a little bit of these cattle trails just to indicate where I want them. So this goes like that. And then go back in with some of this green grass. Oh, okay. This is really earthy through here, so I'm just going to take some of that grass out. Go back in with more of my earth colors. Just the goal in the end is to have it all stand together as a pasture, keeping the values pretty close. Even these earthy colors are pretty close to the value of the grass if you squint. They are a step or two lighter, but not a whole lot. I like to keep my shapes really defined from each other. It's all a building up process. Okay. I'm going to come over here and work on this side a little bit. It's being neglected. Use a slightly bigger brush. I guess I'm kind of doing the opposite. I'm starting out with a smaller brush and ending up with a bigger brush, which is a little different. Works for me. Okay. Get this shadow. Whoops, it's a little too light. I want it to be darker than that and not quite as colorful. Well, I want it to be colorful, but not too colorful. Okay. All right, now I'm going to move back up here to these back trees. Kind of, they're a little bit higher than I had them. It's good to keep rechecking your horizon because sometimes you misjudge that and it really affects your painting if you have your horizon too high or too low. Or if you have the distance too narrow or too wide. It's all part of the design. You have a lot of leeway with that. You just have to do what works well for the painting. So I mixed up some bluer greens to go back here. I'm even going to add a little more white to them. When I add some more white, I like to add a little more color because you can wash out your colors quickly that way. And then there are some little trees clumped up here, and they're really important. They're going to break up that ridge line, this little ridge line here. So I'm going to add them in. I'll come back and fix this red that's poking out. But I want to add that in because that's going to carry over to here. Make it a little darker. It also helps to have those trees there to kind of break this up as it's going off the edge. Okay, I'm going to work on the sky a little more now. Make sure there's no green in that. I'm using kind of a permanent rose for my cool red, and it's great with yellow because that yellow and violet really plays off each other nicely. And I'm not going to worry about getting a little sky on my mountain. I can redefine that or just leave it. You don't want sharp edges on your distant mountains anyway. Okay. So since I made up this moon, I'm going to carry it on down in a nice little reflection in the water. That's getting mucky. So that moon might be too big. I'm going to make it smaller. That's better. I mean, I'm kind of using my imagination, but I don't want it to be too weird. I guess the moon does look that big sometimes. Okay, so now I'm going to go work on this distant hill a little more. Since I scraped it back, I'm going to go in and add a little more blue just to give it a little glow, a little color. It is quite blue. It was very blue that night. Maybe a little darker. This is in Charlestown, West Virginia. I don't know if any of you are familiar. It's not too far away from here. And like I said, I can go back and adjust the edges. Add a little bit of that hillside behind my trees there. And I'm going to take my scraper and just kind of scrape some of those edges. All right, that red right there might be a little distracting. I'm going to go back in and add a really bluey green for that distant hillside. And if you're mixing your paints, I always like to not mix it all the way. You want to get your paints mixed just enough where you're seeing different colors within your paint stroke. You don't have to mix it to within an inch of its life. You can just kind of loosely mix it, and that is a much more vibrant paint stroke. Brush stroke. Okay. get a little indication of this hillside back there, going all the way up. Knock out some of these Technicolor areas. Add in some more muted reds. Also, let me see, I want to get this tree. Once I get to this point, I start moving around the canvas quite, quicker because I'm seeing things that are jumping out at me more. So any white spots start really jumping out at me. So I go back in and they're very distracting. Fill those in. Get some of these leaves up here. Get some of that white, get rid of that white. Okay. Some dark darks coming down from this, not as dark as that cow, but there's some darks in here. So I'm going to put those in, give it a little depth. That might be a little too red in there now. I'm going to take some of that out. It's just constant adjusting, redrawing, redefining, scraping. Okay. And every now and then, at this stage, I'll try and find areas where I can add little patterns or little twigs or lines, something, a variation of brush strokes. So I have some thin little brushes like this and some dagger type, and I'll just go in and create different types of marks. And it's like the texture thing, it creates interest. There's also a tiny little fence up on the top of this hill, and you can't see it, but trust me, it's there. I'm going to put it in. Let me adjust my hillside first a little bit. And this might be a me thing, but long vertical strokes, I don't think look great if you have a whole lot of that going on in your painting, especially like a long format painting like this. I really like to keep a lot of my strokes. Maybe it's like these long passages like this. I don't want it to just be one long stroke. I like to kind of break that up a little bit. It's just more interesting to my eye. Okay, so then we have a few little trees. Just kind of helps with the depth here. I mean, there's a lot going on in this scene, and you could really go crazy with some of the details. I like these posts or tree stumps or whatever they are. That's kind of interesting, and I might actually I'm going to add this guy because I think that's a good. I think he's about here. No, maybe here. It's just like a nice little vertical in there. And then I'm going to put my little fence up here on the hill. Just like little indication. And you don't want them to be like perfectly spaced. You want it to be just this old little farm fence up there, kind of rickety. Anytime you have the opportunity to put in a little pattern of some sort, go for it, because it's really interesting. Our eyes love that kind of thing. I always look for patterns. This is still quite bright here. Okay. A few little mud clumps around these cows. That might be too much. This is how I lose all my brushes. Want to keep that tree kind of transparent. Monet was great at painting through trees like this. It's not easy. Okay, thank you. I think maybe I made this earth in here a little too light, so I'm going to adjust that. I go back and forth until I get it to where it feels right to me. seeing a little bit of that earth come through up here. As I get towards, you know, once I get the canvas covered, I'm not going to say get towards the end, but once I get it covered and I'm adjusting things, then I can mix up thicker paint to lay in. Until then, I keep it relatively thin because I like to be able to paint over it and to make adjustments. So now I can start getting in there with some thicker paint. And like I said, these grasses down here tend to have a little more yellow. Closer they are to you. I don't want to get too much though. That bright yellow green always kind of grates me a little bit. I really just love blue greens. That's my favorite. Put a little light, some little lights in here over the shadow. On this side, since this is going to be kind of our dark side, I mean, relatively speaking, I'm going to put some more blues in over here. This cow is bugging me a little bit, so I'm going to go fix her if I can. Her little legs are all weird. Get that leg, and get that leg. And she has her. That's better. When you come down to their skinny little legs, they're not going to be quite as dark as their bodies. It's the same as tree branches. When you get your tree branches, they narrow as they go out. So your trunk's going to be the darkest, and as you branch out, they get lighter and lighter as you go. And when you get towards these tree leaves and branches against the sky, sometimes I mix in a little bit of my sky color right into the color that I'm using for my tree, whether it be branches or leaves. I just lighten it up with my sky color, and that works surprisingly well. So now I'm just going to kind of see what it needs. I'm going to, just for the heck of it, seeing kind of some cool leaves on this side, so I'm going to put a few of those over here just to pick up some of the light from that moon. I don't know. Why not? Might be a little bluer than that. Going back to my hillside here, I'm just going to add a few little warm accents. This is a little too much right here. That was a little too bright against that red. So you just kind of you're just pushing and pulling these colors until you get a balance that feels right, feels resolved, if you're lucky. Okay, so this needs some more work. This is a kind of how I get started and get going on a painting. I usually take 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 4 for a painting, and sometimes I work on it when I get home. I did practice this painting ahead of time. So I thought in cooking show fashion, I would show you the completed painting that I did ahead of time, and we'll see how close they are because they're probably really different. So here's the painting I did a few days ago, and oh, it's pretty close. But you see I have the same little accents. The tree is a little more resolved, I think. But yeah, pretty close. I like to break up these lines and these edges. It creates more, I haven't gotten to that in this one yet, but it really creates kind of a nice distance in your paintings to really think about your edges. And I think maybe I got this a little bit better in this one, this right along the creek bed here. But I'm trying to keep those cows just, they're cows. There's not a whole lot of information there. I don't want them to be too distracting. It's not really about them. It's about the whole scene, and they just happen to be there. So, yeah. In this one? Yes, because I probably, you like them better darker? Yeah, they stand out a little more. Yeah, they pop a little more. Oh yeah, they are a little more offset. Yeah, they're pretty dead center in this one. So that was kind of an interesting experiment to paint it and then paint it again and see if I made all the same decisions. Because when you're painting, it's just one decision after another. You're just making 1,000 different little decisions as you're going along, and it's kind of surprising and entertaining to see what decisions you make the same every time. But yeah. So does anybody have any questions for me?
So you were talking about laying an opaque over a transplant
Yes.
passage. So I see your moon glows is over I guess you could call that kind of
It's very transparent down here. Yes.
very thinly painted
Yes.
area of that water,
Yes.
and the thick impasto of the
And actually the sky here is quite thin too. And that moon, that makes the moon stand out quite a bit more. It just gives it a little, I mean, the texture as well as the colors you're using together works to make it stand out more. You have to think of all the tools you have. So you can use complementary colors, which I've done here, with kind of purpley pinks and then your yellows, create a nice contrast and kind of a vibration. So, but yeah, I really like that effect of having like opaque areas over transparent sections. It really creates a nice texture. So.
Can I ask why you don't, as many artists put down a base color and you don't use
Oh, you mean start with a panel that's toned? Sometimes I do. In general, I just put down the tone as I'm going along. Sometimes I'll paint, like I did with this hillside, I painted the front area a little different hue than the back. So I work with transparencies to block everything in, but I like to keep it really varied. I vary it quite a bit with the color and with the brush strokes. So, I mean, sometimes the nice thing about working with a toned canvas is you can pull out your lights a lot quicker. Working with a white canvas, you can achieve your transparencies a lot easier. So I guess that's why I kind of like to use white, because I can always scrape back and reveal that transparency, which, I mean, you can also do to an extent if you have a toned canvas. It's just not as, it's not quite as dramatic or as easy. So I just prefer that. And the senior painting doesn't always, I like to see what I'm painting before I lay down that first layer. So different subject matter call for different things. Just whatever I'm, whatever I'm doing that day. So yeah, it's give or take. I don't do one or the other. I don't think one's better than the other. It's just those are the options. If you want the transparency, stay with the white. If you want to get your color or your lights stated quickly, then going with a toned canvas works really well. You can define those really quickly and stick with it. Yeah. So, yes.
I noticed even on your easel you have a frame around it.
Yes, I pre-frame when I'm coming to events and things. I pre-frame things, and then when I'm done, I can just take off the masking tape, and it's framed and ready to go. Yeah, I make all my frames myself, so they work well, especially if you're doing strange shapes like this. It works really well. They're lightweight, easy to carry. You can stack them, and they don't mush the paint up. So it's worked really well for me to use these.
So are you working on sketch canvas?
No, I'm working on panels. I make my own panels too. They're MDF, and I glue linen onto MDF, and then I cradle that to put them in these frames. So
It's a nice job.
thank you. It's solid. I've dropped these and they're fine. So, yeah, they withstand a lot. They've worked out well. Yeah. These, that's a good question. These are 8 by 24. And I really like that aspect ratio of 1:3. I've done 1:2. And those are cool, and I like them, but they're just not as, I don't know what it is. It's something, something maybe golden ratio or something along those lines, but the 1:3 really works better. If you're doing a panorama, you need that extra third to just, for some reason, I've just had much more success using this. It's nice to be able to stretch out a little bit. So, yeah, any other questions? Thank you. Thanks. We went out and camped in that area and stopped at that farm, and the moon was rising, and it was just so beautiful. There was nowhere to pull over and stand. It was just like when you're on these farm roads, there's just nowhere. So I just took a bunch of pictures, and this was the first time I had painted from those pictures, so this was really fun. I enjoyed it. But yeah, these green scenes are always a challenge. You have to really get a lot of reds and oranges and things in the mix, or it can be very overwhelming. So.
Can I ask how much more would you do to the tree? That one's much more. Would you do a lot more?
I have to stand back and look at it for a little bit longer. I might do a little more to that tree, but maybe not a whole lot. See, it's very nebulous. Yeah, and I don't want it to take a whole lot of attention. If I added a lot of little branches and leaves, it might draw too much attention. So probably keep it pretty loose.
We have a question online from Carol. How do you keep the paint off of the frame?
Masking tape. So I put masking tape around the edges. Oops. I put masking tape around the edges, and then I wrap the whole thing with kind of a plastic wrap. And it works surprisingly well. It's a great system. I can't recommend it enough. You just peel. So I had trouble the first time I tried it out. I used the kind of masking tape that doesn't peel up easily, and that was horrible. That was a nightmare. But this is the really delicate tape, and just peel it right up. It's ready to go. It works great. I haven't had any issues. It doesn't get down. So I paint the insides black, and the gap is narrow enough that the paint doesn't really get down in there. It's just a nice little border around the painting. So.
I want to say you have a beautiful still life hanging on the
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I love to do still lifes. They're so much fun. You have total control over still lifes.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. I enjoy those.
Made those complicated daisies so
Thank you.
simple shapes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. They were kind of drooping that day. They were kind of on their last legs. So I tried to get that part of them. They were just so beautiful. But yeah, still lifes are great. And actually, I've done still lifes in these too. With it creates a challenge that we're used to painting. We're used to painting certain shapes. This is the first shape we have to deal with when we approach our painting, and you have to reckon with that and just try to figure out your way around that first. And using something that's so different, or even like a vertical, it really makes you think and makes you. It sparks your creativity in a way. That's really great. So, I love to. I wouldn't want to do it all the time, painting this way, but when I'm stuck, it's a great way to get unstuck. So, I find also if you limit your palette, it's the same kind of thing. Limiting your palette, or using one little brush, or using just a palette knife. These are all different ways you can kind of shake yourself out of a routine. It works really well for me. So I guess I will just keep working on my painting a little bit until we've come to the end of our time, but thank you for all those good questions. Thank you. I'm so glad you all came today. I thought I would just be here by myself.